On the common link theory, PhD 2006, Mcgill University. The four primary reasons for Schacht's failure to produce an acceptable theory. 1. Unfamiliarity with Rijal works, biographical literature. Schacht and his followers' problems is not limited to the analysis of the CL phenomenon as conceived by the traditionists. It goes beyond that to misunderstanding how traditionists evaluate hadith transmitters in the first place. For instance, Juynboll's unfamiliarity with hadith terminology and Rijal works is obvious in his writing and leads him to misapprehend Yahya bin Ma'in, who is one of the most important references in the field of Rijal. Juynboll states, "Many times I've come across the sayings of his referring to Yahya bin Ma'in without providing any references whatsoever, in which certain transmitters are declared trustworthy who have been decried as forgers or at least weak by others. The only inference to be drawn from this, it seems to me, is that even the experts did not know." It is worth noting further that Juynboll was able to discover Yahya himself did not offer opinions different on any single transmitter because of his scanter sources and lack of examples. Juynboll's assertion that the hadith experts did not know about the credibility of the transmitters when they wrote their biographies requires our attention. A diversity of opinions between experts in hadith does exist. However, this does not mean that they were ignorant of the transmitters' biographies. A comparison of such differences with modern academic research makes this clear. The different opinion on the same transmitter is similar to the evaluation of a student in any modern university, where some professors might evaluate a student with a grade A, while others might assign a grade B. You might even find some professors who would evaluate the same student with a grade F. We know that their evaluation is based on such factors as the student's advancement level, the field of study. Thus, student NN may not have put in much effort into his studies at the beginning of his academic life and receive lower marks F, D, C as a consequence, but later exert more effort and earn Bs and As. It is important to note that student NN is not the normal case, though it can happen, and yet one cannot consider him the standard as Juynboll did. Furthermore, there are many reasons for this diversity of evaluation on the part of Rijal works like Yahya bin Ma'in. Rijal scholars like Yahya bin Ma'in, Abu Hatim, Ali ibn al-Madini, Ahmed ibn Hanbal and Bukhari. One of these is the extent of their coverage of the field, with some of them writing about a wide range of narrators, e.g. Ibn Ma'in or Abu Hatim al-Razi, others writing about fewer narrators, e.g. Malik or Shu'bah, and last, those who we have talked about, a few narrators, Ibn Uyayna, Shafi'i. Also, with respect to the strictness or laxity, we find that scholars can be divided into three categories. The hardliners, those who are quick to disparage and who are strict in their commendation, Ibn Ma'in, Abu Hatim, al-Jawzajani. The more lenient ones, e.g. Tirmidhi, al-Hakim and Bayhaqi. And lastly, the balanced observers, e.g. Bukhari, Ahmed ibn Hanbal, Abu Zura and Ibn Adi. Consensus has existed from the time of the early traditionists onward upon the general criteria employed to discern who may or may not be considered as righteous and an accurate transmitter. The generality of the experts in hadith and law unanimously agree on the stipulation that the person whose transmission may be adduced as a proof must be upright, adl, accurate, darbit in what he narrates. Specifically, he must be a Muslim, adult, of sound mind, free of tendencies towards impiety and defects of character, alert, careful, retentive if he transmits from memory, and accurate in handling text if he transmits from it. If he paraphrases hadith in tradition, it is further stipulated that he must be aware of the sense of a text may be altered. God knows best. We will clarify this general statement by addressing specific issues. Ibn Salah continues his exposition of these categories by addressing 15 specific issues. Almost every book on Mustalah al-Hadith contains a section concerned with the criteria for discerning these categories. A general survey of such literature reveals some common cases used to demonstrate examples of unrighteous transmitters. For instance, traditionists do not consider a partisan transmitter to be reliable, that is, a person commenting in support of their respective sectarian ideology. When a narrator's behaviour demonstrates contempt for the Sharia, they are considered unreliable. If a transmitter is proven to have exhibited dishonesty in speech or behaviour, they are also rendered unreliable. Additionally, they would consider narration that contradicts the actual practice of the transmitter to be rendered suspect and thus rejected. However, one might ask, why do different traditionists reach different conclusions on the same transmitter? There are a few transmitters who have been commended by some of the muhaddiths and discredited by others. More rarely, a transmitter will receive two contradictory judgments from the same muhaddith who would praise him at one time and discard him at another. Ibn Ma'in is famous for such disparity. Traditionists discuss this issue in Mustalah al-Hadith, and they set rules to deal with such contradiction. These rules are divided into two main cases. In the first case, when the transmitter receives two contradictory judgments from the same muhaddith, it is because the transmitter's status might have changed. For instance, he may have been reliable with strong memory, but over time lost his memory. Or, if the transmitter relies on his writing and at one point loses his books, such as the case of Ibn Lahiyah, then the muhaddith will give different judgments on his narration. At times, the muhaddith will state the reason why he changed his opinion, though in many cases he would not give an explanation. Another reason that makes the muhaddith's opinion seem contradictory as regarding the same transmitter occurs when he compares between two transmitters. For example, if he were to say that transmitter A is weaker than B, in this case the muhaddith does not mean that transmitter A is a weak transmitter, but in comparison with transmitter B, he is relatively weaker. The second case, where the transmitter receives two different judgments from two muhaddiths, in addition to the two reasons mentioned in the first case, which could be applied in the second case, where we have two muhaddiths, there is another reason for such diversity. At times, a muhaddith will be aware of something that others do not know, and also criticize the transmitter for that reason. Whenever there is a contradiction with the same transmitter, either from the same muhaddith or from different muhaddiths, they have to decide on the most valid judgment. There are different opinions as to how to give preponderance to one judgment over the other. One opinion is to go with the discrediting, the other is to go with the commendation. As-Sarkhasi took a moderate position and said that we should deal with each case individually. In other words, we have to verify the reason why the muhaddith changed his mind, or why the two different muhaddiths have two different opinions. Based on an in-depth study, we can decide which opinion is stronger than the other. Stay tuned for many more parts.